Felonious.
Yeah.
I don't know why that wouldn't have occurred to me.
The charge against Arbuckle is causing the death of a human being while engaged in or attempting to engage in the commission of a felony. Under the California law, this is first-degree murder. Matheson announced that every detail of what occurred at Arbuckle's booze party at the Hotel St. Francis, during which Arbuckle's alleged assault on Miss Rapp is said to have taken place, would be laid before the grand jury. Statements in the form of affidavits have been obtained from every person who was at the party, he said. Absolutely all the affidavits of those present dovetail completely, declared Matheson. There is no disagreement as to what took place. We have a complete case against Arbuckle, including statements as to what occurred behind locked doors of his bedroom.
I'm bothered by the fact that she stayed there for days after this happened.
Right.
That she did not voluntarily leave, and that no one suggested that she should, because presumably if it was a party,
it would have definitely broken up by then.
They would have done more drinking, and in the days after, there was probably more activity. So she just in a bed feeling terrible?
Yes, apparently.
And then didn't leave?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what bothers me is they say we've got statements as to what occurred behind locked doors of his bedroom. How do you have statements about what occurred?
Right. Because I guess it was from the lady.
Right. So we will present the strongest evidence to show that gross and criminal brutality by Arbuckle was responsible for Miss Rapp's death. All those who attended the fatal party will be called before the grand jury as witnesses. Arbuckle will also be summoned, but is doubtful whether he will testify, as his attorneys have warned him to keep his mouth shut. Witnesses were guarded by police today. While police would not tell the reason for this, it was learned they feared the witnesses would be persuaded to refuse to give their evidence to the grand jury. 2 more women witnesses were being sought by the police today to testify against Arbuckle. They are believed to have been in his hotel suite at least part of the time during the alleged wild party. Their evidence will throw the last ray of light on what promises to be the biggest scandal in movie high life on record. Others who attended Arbuckle's party last Monday afternoon were, according to the police, Ira G. for Louis, a New York salesman, Alice Blake, a San Francisco cafe singer, Mrs. B. M. Delmont of Los Angeles, a friend of Miss Rapp, Lowell Sherman of Los Angeles, a moving picture actor, Fred Fishback of Los Angeles, a moving picture director, Al Semaker, manager of Miss Rapp.
So there were that many people in and out involved in that.
Yes. Statements
party.
Of physicians who attended Miss Rapp and who performed an autopsy on her after death differed. Dr. William Ubpuy, one of the autopsy surgeons, issued a statement as follows. The post-mortem examination showed a ruptured bladder, the rupture being due to natural causes. There were no marks of violence on the body. There was absolutely no evidence of criminal assault, no signs that the girl had been attacked in any way. Dr. M.E. Rummel said, I treated Miss Rapp for 2 or 3 days at the St. Francis Hotel. In the beginning, I believed that she was merely suffering from alcoholism. Later symptoms of peritonitis set in. When she became worse, I called in Dr. Rixford and Dr. W.R. Reed. They advised against an operation. Death was due to the rupture of the bladder. There was a large bruise, I think, on the left arm. I cannot say what caused the rupture. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff, just a lot of stuff just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
William Randolph Hearst papers led the charge.
Yep.
Surmising that due to Roscoe's excessive weight, Virginia's bladder was ruptured while he raped her.
Oh.
Soon, all sorts of rumors.
Well, that's believable.
Yeah.
It's possible, but not
proven. Right.
Sure.
And so then
Hearst is yellow journalism?
Yeah.
Yes?
Right.
Okay.
And so there are all sorts of rumors about Roscoe having these sexual depravities, and he remained silent at first, but then eventually it got so far out of hand that he had to make a statement. And he claimed that after having a few drinks with Virginia, the actress became, quote, hysterical. She, quote, complained she could not breathe and then started to tear off her clothes. Arbuckle insisted that he was never alone with her and that he found Rapp in his bathroom vomiting. He and several other guests tried to revive her, but from what they believed was, drinking too much. Roscoe stated that he and his friends got Virginia a room of her own so she would recover. So that would sync up with the fact that she was at the hotel for another 2 days before she checked into the hospital. So the grand jury decided to proceed with the charge of manslaughter and not first-degree murder. They went to trial almost immediately, like 2 weeks after the day of her death, which was really crazy to me. The prosecution immediately had issues, namely with their star witness, Maud Delmont. Her story kept changing. as did the closeness of her connection to Rapp. She originally said that they known each other for years, and then at one point, which she actually was quoted in a newspaper article that I looked up, she said that she'd met her just 2 days before they went up to San Francisco together.
She was also a convicted criminal.
Right. Yeah, she had been charged with extortion in the past, so not the ideal witness. Then to make matters worse, telegrams surfaced. These telegrams that she sent to lawyers, which basically said...
Bambina?
Yeah. She sent these lawyers telegrams that said, we have Roscoe Arbuckle in a hole here, chance to make some money off of him. Nonetheless, the public had already tried Roscoe based on the multitude of reports of Delmont's testimony, and they basically said, hey, you're guilty.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
His good friends Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin were constantly defending him in the press. And then his estranged wife Minta came to LA, or San Francisco rather, from New York to be with him.
Oh.
And she claimed in multiple...
So people did stand by his side.
Right,
so it was kind of a court of public opinion.
Right. She said that he would have never been capable of doing such a thing. So as the trial began, Roscoe's lawyers presented evidence that Virginia had frequent bladder infections. And then there was more damaging testimony that they got on her regarding her character, but Roscoe apparently told them not to say anything because it would be disrespectful to her. Which, I mean, seems like a pretty stand-up guy, actually. He eventually took the stand himself, and when the jury went to deliberate, they were deadlocked, 11-2 for acquittal. And so they set a new trial.
Oh, my gosh. Wait, the first one was hung? Second one? Okay.
First one was hung. They set a new trial, and that started in late November. Once again, the jury was deadlocked in favor of acquittal. Finally, everyone decided to take a step back and maybe spend a little more time preparing. So
Wait, what do you mean deadlocked in favor of acquittal? It was basically either deadlocked or they wanted him to get off.
Right. When they're deadlocked, that means, because you have to have... Everybody on the jury has to...
Agree.
Right. So the first one, 11 people thought he should be acquitted. 2 people thought he shouldn't be acquitted. So it was deadlocked. And then...
Because they couldn't convince those 2 people so
to
it's
switch.
Hung. Got
so
it.
Same situation.
Okay.
So... The third trial was scheduled for March of 1922. And in the time that passed in between the second and the third trials, that was when the papers really started kind of taking off with some really crazy stories. One paper, well, it wasn't one because a lot of these papers were owned by the same people. So it was the same story being, printed in multiple papers. But basically this story came out about Henry Lehrman, who was Virginia's fiance. So he'd been very public in his grief. He was quoted as saying that you better not let me around Roscoe Arbuckle.
And he's in New York?
He was actually in New York at the time. He was filming a movie and said, I can't come back for the funeral because I'm filming a movie, but I'm devastated. And if I were to get near Roscoe Arbuckle, I'd kill him. So then it came out that he was actually the Oregon Daily Journal in Portland ran a story about him, accusing him of promising an up-and-coming starlet a fur coat and a role in his movies just days before he paid $1,000 for Virginia's casket flowers. So when the starlet arrived at the store to pick up this coat, the owner refused to release it because Layer's check had bounced. So he was starting to look a little bit like a liar. And he had had jumped on board with the Delmont woman and, So the new trial began in February of 1922, and this time Roscoe's attorneys came out swinging. Witnesses testified that Virginia was a loose woman. A nurse from Chicago said that she'd given birth to a baby in 1910. Then the prosecution...
Why didn't this come out before?
That was apparently the stuff that Roscoe said don't use.
Oh, because it's character, like attacks on her character.
Right. But by this time, I think they were just can we get this over with?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Just bring it all out.
So the prosecution then tried to prove that it was not the same Virginia. It was a different Virginia Rapp. So witnesses testified that Virginia was promiscuous and that she had the clap. Others said that she suffered from frequent abdominal attacks. Other people said that she frequently got intoxicated at parties and then would often disrobe. So the jury deliberated for only 5 minutes and they finally found Roscoe not guilty of manslaughter.
Wow.
They even apologized to him.
Well, how did they so they're trying him in the same place.
Right.
And we've already talked about this, but it's not double jeopardy because they're hung jury
right.
both the first 2 times.
So they couldn't go back and retry him on the same charges after this third time because
But his reputation, meanwhile,
is totally shot.
He's being dragged through the mud because this is all in the papers now by the third time. Well, even by the second time, I'm sure that it was all over.
Absolutely.
Everywhere, the press. And it's all very sensationalized. And I can't imagine that any jury would ever be able to be unbiased if they're holding it where this crime took place.
Right.
Nothing seems fair.
No. And it's pretty amazing that they still came out and said not guilty. You would think after all that.
It's sad because this young woman died and we'll never know. We still don't know
exactly what happened. Right. Yeah. So when they announced his acquittal, they issued a statement, the jury did, saying, quote, "Acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done to him. There was not the slightest proof adduced to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. He was manly throughout the case and told a straightforward story, which we all believe. We wish him success and hope that the American people will take the judgment of 14 men and women that Roscoe Arbuckle is entirely innocent and free from all blame." And that's not entirely true either, because he told two different versions of the story. They weren't like wildly different from each other. Which
was he put on the stand in every trial?
I don't know. I think he was, and I guess I think that was what they said. The story that he told before he went to trial was slightly different from what he told on the stand. But I mean, like I said, it wasn't flagrantly different or anything like that. But he basically said that when they found her sick, they actually got her own room and put her in that room
in the hospital or in the hotel.
In the hotel. So that might account.
So she wasn't part of the suite anymore.
So that might account for. They probably thought, well, if she's sick,
if she was drunk,
she'll sleep it off, she'll wake up, she'll go on her way. But instead, she was seriously ill. So the damage was done. Film magnates had hired a censor to reform their image after months of scandals, because this was just one in a long line of different ones that had happened. Roscoe Arbuckle was banned from the movies. While this decision was reversed 8 months later, Roscoe,
doesn't matter.
Ever the big spender, fell upon hard times. In 1923, he became formally divorced from Minta Durfee, who for her part swore until the day of her death nearly 60 years later that Roscoe had a heart of gold. His friends tried to help him out by giving him parts in their movies, so he would act alongside Buster Keaton, Rudolph Valentino, and Douglas Fairbanks, but the public was unforgiving. By 1924, James R. Quirk, who was a writer for Photoplay magazine, wrote, quote, "I would like to see Roscoe Arbuckle make a comeback to the screen." He also said, quote, "The American nation prides itself upon its spirit of fair play. We like the whole world to look upon America as the place where every man gets a square deal. Are you sure Roscoe Arbuckle is getting one today? I'm not." Eventually, Roscoe changed his name to William B. Goodrich, or Will Be Good. And I think I actually was reading this story. He said he was basically was with Buster Keaton and they were joking around and they said, "You should be Will Be Good." And Roscoe said that's just a little bit too much. So he did change it to William B. Goodrich, which was his father's middle name. So he worked behind the scenes, directing films for those who remained loyal to him. He briefly reunited with Minta in 1924, and they possibly remarried because Minta filed for divorce again in Paris in December of that same year. So Roscoe was still struggling at this time and had become an alcoholic as a result of this. He married a woman named Doris Dean in May of 1925. For the latter half of the 1920s, he would direct a number of comedy short films, and one actress said to him, quote, "He made no attempt to direct this picture. He just sat in his director's chair like a dead man. He had been very nice and sweetly dead ever since the scandal that ruined his career. But it was such an amazing thing for me to come in and make this broken down picture, and to find my director was the great Roscoe Arbuckle. Oh, I thought he was magnificent in films. He was a wonderful dancer, a wonderful ballroom dancer in his heyday. It was like floating in the arms of a huge donut. Really delightful."
That sounds delicious.
I know.
And also kind of disturbing.
Right. So nevertheless, he was respected enough that he did direct Marion Davies in 1927.
Oh, man.
So that was one of his better films, they say. So in 1929, Doris Dean filed for divorce from Roscoe, claiming cruelty and desertion. Things were...
This guy just can't win.
I know, right? It was looking kind of bad, but then somehow
things just totally turned around. In 1932, Warner Brothers signed him to a contract for 6 comedies, all which were talkies. All were done under his name.
So I guess he was forgiven?
Right.
Oh, so not as Will Be Good.
He was Roscoe
Arbuckle.
I did see that a couple theaters in the UK refused to show them, but they were the only ones. And these 6 films are the only